Hi everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Open World. My name is Melissa. I'm here with Lara and Ale.
Hi.
And today we're going to talk about different Spanish variants. So we told you guys our first language is Spanish, but the challenging thing about Spanish is it's the official language of 21 countries. So it definitely it raises some questions about which Spanish should you translate your video game in particular, of course. It's like European Spanish, or there's something that we know of like Latin American Spanish, which is not, how would you guys describe the Latin American Spanish?
One size fits many.
Yeah. One size that tries to fit all of them.
Exactly.
But yeah, it sounds weird, it doesn't sound natural, but it's something that we are exposed at a very young age, from TV shows, from series, from movies, and everything that you're consuming that is media. You hear this neutral or Latin American Spanish, that it doesn't actually represent any dialect or any country in particular.
Exactly. So it's like it's not spoken in any country, but it's more like it was designed so that everyone can understand it. So you take out all of the regionalisms, idioms, and
you're not gonna hear how you speak, but you're gonna understand the same thing that a person from Colombia or Uruguay or Venezuela understands.
Exactly. Yeah, and sometimes it is. They call it the Mexican Spanish, and it is not even Mexican Spanish.
No. Yeah, exactly.
Because not even Mexicans speak like that. It's just like they try to make it the most understandable for all the countries in Latin America, and it still sometimes sounds weird for us.
Yeah, and especially as like adults, I think now we can understand it, but when we were kids, I mean, like you said, all our cartoons are dubbed in Latin, like this neutral kind of Spanish. And I don't know about you guys, like if you used this when you were kids, like using neutral Spanish, or if you heard like kids speaking this way.
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, every time you find yourself with a little kid, you probably might hear them speak in this neutral Spanish, and it's just like, oh my God, why are you talking like that? And
why are you talking like it's neutral? I mean,
it's so neutral, and it sounds so weird. Maybe when it's coming from like a movie or a video game or something, it doesn't sound that weird. But when it comes from another human's mouth, why are you talking like that?
But because it's not your own.
No,
right?
it's not your own. You cannot.
In Spain, movies, video games, they sound like they do.
Yeah.
So that's the main difference. I mean, it's one for everyone, but that's for them. It happened to me that I was talking to a colleague from Spain, from Madrid, and she told me that it's very, very important for them.
I think it is something, it's even stated by law. They have to have all the media
dubbed
with voiceover and subtitled and everything. So it's just like, it is something super important for them, and we have been consuming their content because of the lack of this Latin American neutral Spanish, right? And both of them sound weird for us, but one of them gets closer to what we understand.
Yeah, I think that the difference between like European and Latin America is really big. Like, they should definitely be considered like two different languages when you're translating. Yeah.
I mean, you can understand each other. Like sometimes maybe when you, as a Spanish speaker, you might understand something from Portuguese or Italian too, because we share some similarities with the languages. But yeah, it's just completely different languages. Yeah,
and in the case of video games, I mean, we always talk about that immersive experience that you get, especially when you're playing a game and it's spoken in your language. Have you guys played any games that were translated into Latin American Spanish?
Luckily, yes.
Or European Spanish?
Yes, but the thing is, sometimes you don't get the voiceovers in Latin American Spanish.
Yeah, just the text.
Oh, I see.
Which I don't mind, to be honest with you, because the voiceovers sometimes are weird.
I prefer the voiceovers in English if it's not done properly.
Yeah.
Myself.
otherwise it's just some weird, because if they try to do like a voiceover using neutral Spanish, and sometimes you might have different nationalities in the game or something like that, they might sound a little bit racist.
Like off. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like it
they
goes
are
to
trying.
they go to stereotypes.
Yeah, they go to stereotypes, and I don't like that.
Yeah, I mean, I know it happens sometimes in English as well, like when they're making up like accents according to that character's background or something. But yeah, in Spanish it's used as well, and it can sound a bit strange.
Yeah,
for sure.
absolutely. But like the first thing that comes to my mind is actually when you have something to grab, to pick up. And you have the
That's
Spanish.
the easiest.
Yeah,
The first. It shows.
It's just like when you're going to grab something in Spanish, it says coger, but in Latin American Spanish, that means to have sex.
To have sex, yeah.
So it's just like, how can a word be so different and have this kind of
two different meanings altogether.
Yeah, and I'm not saying to be like, you should totally make this game in Argentinian Spanish, so every time I have to put on a t-shirt, I will say remera. No, it's okay, I get it, because not every country from Latin America will understand that this is a remera, because in Chile this is called a polera.
A polera.
So it's just like, it changes.
Or money in Mexico, it's lana. We in Argentina don't call it lana.
No.
But
yeah,
it's used.
Yeah, and I mean that one of the most challenging things when you have to translate into Latin American Spanish is exactly like, just to not have any offensive words that can, be interpreted in very different ways, like that word from Spanish, Spain. But even in like Mexico, I mean, we have very different words that it can mean something offensive maybe in other countries. So what do you guys think is the best approach when you have to have like that neutral kind of Latin American Spanish and try not to be offensive? Or
for me it's like to find a common ground, to do your research, to maybe have people from those specific countries working in your team, so you have a diverse team that can put their input and their knowledge on their words that you may do not know the meaning behind that specific word. For me it's a little bit of that, to find a common ground, but also having a diverse team that can put a good input into
absolutely.
Translate.
It needs to be mindful. I mean, Latin American Spanish works, of course, but if you have the resources to do further research and truly tune, everything, it's going to make the experience much more enjoyable for everyone.
Absolutely. I mean, if it is, and some people are doing this, like, instead of having this Latin American neutral Spanish, having it localized to like Spanish from Mexico, Colombian, and Argentinian, for example, like depending on your audience. And when you do that, like you're definitely going to make a difference, like on those countries that you're targeting, because we're not used to having content localized to our. So you can connect a lot better. And especially, I mean, a lot of video games are full of, I don't know, like jokes and words like and all of that. It's basically missed when you're having it in Latin American Spanish, because it sounds very like washed up, like bland version of Spanish without any resonance, without. And one example I always think of is Deadpool. I don't know if you guys have watched this movie.
Both.
And of course, both.
Yes.
And I mean, for everyone who has watched it, like in English, it's just full of
fun.
Yeah, exactly. It's just full of like swear words and everything. And like, and actually, when they translated to Spanish from Spain, they won an important award because the adaptation was so creative and they used so many jokes and so many things from Spanish from Spain. But everyone from Latin America had to see through like a very generic movie that wasn't, a lot of references, a lot of jokes were kind of messed.
Some of the jokes were not properly targeted, because I remember, like, maybe if I'm mistaken, please correct me, but I believe Luis Miguel was one of the characters of one of their
Yes.
jokes instead of another.
Yes, instead of another diamond, yes.
And we were like,
Who can everyone from Latin America know? Let's just
Luis Miguel, yeah.
yeah.
It was a little bit painful to watch in Latin America, in the Latin American Spanish that I appreciate the effort though.
Yeah, of course. I mean, we understand sometimes it's like the easiest way to target all of Latin American audience. But I don't know if you guys have watched that. There's a version online that was it's a fun dub version of Deadpool 2 from Argentinian Spanish.
So good.
Yeah.
And it's just so funny. It's full of like Argentinian like swear words and references, and it went viral, and still nowadays it's like shared. So it kind of shows the impact that can have.
Yeah,
like,
the
when
importance and how can you make the movie actually resonate with an entire audience, and you can actually like really have good amounts of people watching your content and having a good laugh instead of these Latin American Spanish that the jokes were like
I mean, it's an extra step in your market research. I mean, you've done your market research, you know where your movie or game or audiovisual content is gonna work. Why don't you use that research?
Absolutely, yeah, and to connect a bit more with you, and that's basically what you want when you want to translate or localize your content. And going back to video games, can you guys think of any examples of like video games that you played and how that translation worked?
Yeah, I mean, I have. Do you want to go?
No, I.
You have your share of the game you're going to talk. That's.
You go.
Okay, I will go.
You're a patient person.
I remember. I don't know if this is still going, but I remember playing a video game that was called Move or Die. It's such a funny game because if you stop moving, you die. So you have to keep moving.
Literally, you move.
It's so good. And it is actually localized to Argentinian Spanish, and it's so fun. The voiceover is so good and everything. I don't know if they kept going with that because, you know, with the updates and everything, it's sometimes...
challenging, of course. Yeah,
it's super challenging, but that's so good. And another example that is not that good.
a bit controversial.
It is Green Fandango, because when you play Green Fandango, it is not localized, at least in Latin American Spanish, it is just in European Spanish. And they have this bad guy that is supposed to be from Argentina, and they hire...
That accent is horrible.
That is such a stereotype as well. Like for every like, if any of you guys are from Latin America hearing this, you know that Argentinians are sometimes targeted as like the bad guy.
And the voice actor, he was from Spain, obviously, because he didn't speak like an Argentinian person.
Like he was like making up an accent.
Yeah,
Argentinian
he was
accent.
making up an accent. It was a little bit of a miss, and to be honest with you, like I didn't like it. I felt offended, and I was like,
could we say in their defense that the game was done like in '98?
of course,
Yes.
it's a really
Because it's
game.
a good game. It's an
Yeah.
oldie but goodie, you know.
It's a
no
really
but go.
good game. Yeah, but that thing,
Absolutely.
it caught my attention. How can you detach yourself when you find something like that it actually kind of hurts your feelings? You're like,
I wonder if it
like
landed. I wonder if it landed the same way in different parts of the world.
or maybe like here maybe you can hear another Argentinian person talking wonderful stuff about this, but that is something that really bothered me, and maybe there are other people that is bothered too by the same exact thing. So it's just like,
and I think it's just what we're talking about. If you want to connect, that was probably not their intention. They just wanted to maybe like make it sound a bit more like this, people from different Spanish speaking countries in this game. But if you don't follow like certain, and you just try to avoid, you want to avoid like offending your audience. I mean, that's basically. How about you, Ale?
I gotta say, Batman Arkham Knight. For me, it was like watching a movie, and if you play the games in English and everything, you have Kevin Conroy doing Batman. Rest in peace. He died just last year. You have Mark Hamill doing the Joker. Come on, I mean, so
It's insane. Yeah.
it's a high standard.
Yeah.
So it delivers. It delivers into what you expect from a game of that quality with that voice actors, but at the same time, it's like what we've been discussing. It just doesn't hit right, because again, it's neutral.
In Latin American
you
Spanish.
have the
Yeah.
bastards, bastardos, and we don't say bastardos.
Yeah.
Things
Yeah.
like that, and
It like puts you off a little bit, right? When you see like a really bad guy and he says a word that you would never hear from a bad guy, and you're like,
that's the thing. I mean,
it's even a little funny sometimes. Like
it was good. It was good. It was incredibly done, but it still doesn't cut it. I prefer to play it in English just because those expressions sound.
they
more
put you off a bit.
natural.
Yeah, no, of course.
I'm thinking, we have the opportunity to play it in English because we all speak English and Spanish. We are bilingual, right? But I really, really appreciate when they try to go with Latin American Spanish because I have little sisters and I have little brothers that they don't speak English. So being able to localize your game into this neutral Latin American Spanish, for me it's like an accessibility door, because you're making your game accessible not only for me, that maybe I don't appreciate that much the Latin American Spanish, at least the dubbing, but the text part of the Latin American Spanish, it's great, I love it, but the dubbing sometimes sounds weird, but I love it for kids. I love it for kids. Like, I think that's the super way to go when you have a video game and you have it localized in Spanish European and you want that same game to have a really good successful industry or audience in Latin America. It is not going to work because we don't feel connected with that Spanish. We don't feel the same feeling, when you're playing it. You don't feel the immersion, everything.
You can feel confused sometimes. I mean, some part. I mean, some things just sound very strange for us.
You have a mission, and you don't understand what you are trying to do.
There's a lot of cases where you don't really know. Okay, what's this item? I need to check what the item is.
Yeah. Well, the other day I was playing a video game. I cannot actually remember the name, but it had this specific. Like a paragraph for a quest or something, and I couldn't understand. I was like, I have to change the language of the game to English to be able to do this quest because I was stuck,
And your first language is Spanish, which is like kind of insane.
Is Spanish. I was playing it in European Spanish, and I had to change it to English to understand what this quest wanted me to do, and I thought like, no. You have to make your game.
I don't remember what game.
American Spanish.
I had something happening to me that the same thing. I don't remember what game in PlayStation 1 days with a tutorial.
Oh.
I was stuck in a tutorial for like an hour or two before Google. I mean, before Google was a thing. I mean, PlayStation 1 days, like 97, 98. I was a kid, and I was like, I don't know what I have to do, and I had to call my dad. And what he did was he switched off the game. He reset the console, he put it in English.
Wow.
And he read it in English and told me,
like
you have to do this.
Wow.
I don't remember what it was, like going side by side with a car or something, but he had to turn the game in English to understand because he didn't understand either in Spanish.
Yeah, and I'm actually like imagining nowadays with everything being so fast and so instant, having to do that to a game, to go back, change the language, maybe reset the game because you have to start. It's painful. It's so painful because if I was so like tired on a day that I just wanted to sit and play and chill, maybe I wouldn't do it. Maybe I would just turn off my PC and say goodbye for today.
That's not the case when you were growing up.
Yeah, but in that specific game, I really wanted to do this quest because I was so immersed let's say I was playing.
You were connected.
I was having fun, and I wanted to do this quest because I thought this is going to be so much fun, and I got stuck because I didn't understand it.
Nowadays it's unacceptable.
Yeah, nowadays I think it's like no.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do that.
Yeah, it's not like what you want for your game. Oh, definitely. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think the point from everything that we've been talking is like you should really know your audience and know what impact you want to create on those people. Like, you know, if you want to reach Latin America, you can choose, you know, there's
have the option.
Yeah, you have that
Yeah.
option. If you want to go like the extra mile, you can even, you know, localize it to different variants of Spanish in Latin American countries, which would be great to see more. I think we would
absolutely.
all love to see a bit more.
Absolutely, yeah, but I think that's asking for a lot. Because nowadays they only think of Spanish, European Spanish. I just want to bring up to the table that European Spanish is not the same as Latin American Spanish. So please, if you have a video game and you wanted to make it successful here, go with the Latin American Spanish.
Yeah, know your audience, and if you don't know how to do it, find a company that
Research.
can help you and
Yeah.
do your research. There are many places where you can just research for free.
Yeah.
Just go to
Absolutely.
YouTube. That's gonna be a game changer for sure. At least in you knowing more to where to look. You know.
Yeah, I think
Absolutely.
it's a common practice that most Latin Americans will understand. We will understand this Latin
Yeah.
American neutral.
And the
Spanish.
important thing is that you, like you said, you're reaching, you know, if you have a game for kids, you're reaching that audience. They can play it,
Yeah.
even if it's not the same, if you not connect the same as like if you were localized to your country, you can still enjoy it. And I think that's even a great thing.
And adults that don't speak English. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure, definitely.
we are privileged. We speak
We
two
are
languages, but
privileged,
there are
yeah.
many adults that also
Absolutely.
don't
Yeah,
understand.
definitely. So this is it for today. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you have any games that you played in Spanish, or if you're curious about Spanish variants, anything, let us know in your comments.
Please, in the comments down below. Also, find our Discord channel there too, so you can reach out to us. Thank you so much for watching.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.